Hello and welcome back to the Overcome Yourself podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today with one of my favorite people on this earth, I think, Brenda friggin' Adelman.
Thank you, freaking
Oh my,
Nicole. I love that
yes.
introduction. I love you too. Oh my God, you are such a blessing in my
No,
life.
you are Brenda. Our topic for today is going to be turning your talk into a performance. And like, really, Brenda, you have done amazing things with me. Like I never ever thought, I like the idea of like an open stage and I was like, "Oh, I wonder." But I never thought that I would have something to say really, And so working with you since I guess since last year, I've been on stage 3 times in your shows. Yes,
Yay.
and and so you like not only have you helped me get on stage, you helped me put together my story. Your method is just absolutely mind-blowing. It just breaks putting together your story into just its simplest form, and you make magic freaking happen, man. That's why you got to be
Thank
Brenda freaking
you.
Edelman.
I am Brenda freaking Adelman, Brenda
Yes.
from Brooklyn. Thank you. Thank you so much. I do see
Yes.
magic happen. I see it all the time. And it is about, it's simple, my process, but it's also super creative. Like using every little part of who you are, your talent, your presence, your story. I love it. I love getting to see my clients just come alive. And that's why I also create platforms for my clients, because I remember when I started sharing my story way too long ago to tell everybody, I didn't have a platform, it was before everything was virtual, way before that. And it was like trying to find a stage where I could put my story up and actually take a temperature with the audience was hard. And then once I did get on stage, like outside of a class, I remember how terrifying it was to actually tell my story at the time in the format of a one person show in front of all these strangers. And a couple of years ago, pre pandemic, I started not only teaching, writing, performing classes, but I started doing a showcase. And I noticed that my clients were terrified to the point where they really were like, I don't know if I could show up. But then when they did, and they did, they were so proud of themselves, and their presentation just exponentially, their talent, their presence, everything grew because they had that platform. And so I knew that whether they continued working with me or not, they already grew way more than if they just stayed in a class, because we can hide in classes and stuff like that. And so now I do that virtually for my clients. So
Yes, yes, I
yeah.
know. I know.
Yeah. What
I
was that
know.
like? Do you remember the first time? Because I do remember working with you on your story. And I was just, oh, that story is pretty incredible. I know you've said it. I don't know if you've said it publicly, about how, we came to that first meeting and you're like, no, I don't have anything.
Yeah.
And then and you had crumpled up what you had written, because that's
Yeah.
how so many of us are. It's like, what do I have to say? And then I was like, nope, I want to hear it.
Yep,
and
yep.
and I couldn't believe it. Like immediately, first of all, immediately, I had such a connection with you that I didn't have. And then I had so much respect, kind of in awe for you to be so young and to have gone through so much loss, so many challenges, and to have overcome it the way you did. And that was just from you telling me like less than 5 minutes,
Yeah.
right? I was
Yeah,
like, that's it. Now we just
yeah.
have to develop it,
Yeah.
make and make it really presentational. And that's why the topic today is like, you want your presentation to match the power of your story. And that I'm really excited about that.
Yes. And it opens up it opens up everything because when working with you, learning to tell my story, learning the pieces, learning how to break apart the pieces and be like, okay, let me focus in on this. It's helped me in everything else in my business. When I'm putting together presentations, master classes, when I'm, doing tutorials, when we're doing these podcast episodes. Um, And so everything that you do leads back to, like the business side. So as a business owner, I encourage other business owners to go get your acting coach because
Exactly.
yes, a lot of
Exactly.
what we do, our jobs are being on social media and getting out in front of people and letting them
And
know this
video.
is how I can help you. And that's what you've helped me to really step into that and step into the stage that is social media, because social media is its own stage, right?
Absolutely. And it's whether you're, writing your story, but still writing it for an impact, including stories, or if it's presenting and video, of course, everyone. And I teach video presentation because the algorithms, everything works for you if you do video, and it's just another layer of people feeling like they know you and they're being in the room with you, so that you don't have to sell so hard because they already know who you are. In your videos you're talking about what you do, so it's like having, it's just like it's a win-win for everybody, really, if you can learn these skills. And I know people are terrified. That's why I teach this, because years ago, because I came from an acting background, I already had like years of training. I'm sure tens of thousands of dollars worth of acting classes, because there was scene study, then there was how do you act for the camera, how do you act for commercials, how do you act for film. Believe it or not, it's all different. And so I would go to business meetings as a business owner, small business owner, and I would see my fellow coaches just be like terrified of video and really, say that they weren't good. And, some of them were drinking or they were doing 30 takes, to loosen up. And yet they were also saying it wasn't getting any better. They were just like, I got to get it out there. And so it was like, you just need the skills. And as someone with an acting background, I can give you the skills. And that's how that was born, because I see these brilliant people that are experts, and then they don't appear like experts because they have some coach who's like, just go
Right.
live. Even though you have no skills. It's like, you know what, if you had nothing at stake, that'd be fine. But if you have your business at stake and making money and staying in business and growing your business, get the skills. So that's why, and skills are beyond, this is where the camera is set up. You have your tripod, you have your lighting. You should have that already, but I talk about presentation because that's what my forte is.
Hmm.
Because I've done my 10,000 hours on stages. I've done my probably 10,000 hours on doing interviews and things like that. Like I know what works, because as an actor my whole life, I also know, I lean in, I look at what's happening for the other person. And there are stages in telling your story. So, at first you might be just like, this is what my story is. You just want to get it out there. But then you want to graduate to the next stage, which is, okay, where are the nuances? What should I share? And then, of course, you want to have variety in presentation, because if you don't have variety, you can have this incredible thing you want to say, but people tune out because everything has the same weight. You know that.
Yes. And one of the things I teach is having a queen bee role. I learned that from someone else, but your queen bee role is either going to be video or audio or written content. And no matter which way you decide to make content, you can create content from that content in all the other forms.
Yeah.
And so having the skills to record a video and do it in a way where you can also pull the audio to create a podcast. So like this
And you can
episode
always
is,
do that. Yeah.
yes, yes, but it's got to be good, right? So that people will listen to it. So
Oh
it has
yeah,
a
because
good
that's
intro.
interesting, because
Yes.
yesterday, inside Soul Story Lounge, which is my inner circle,
Mhm.
one of my clients, we have this thing where you can, post a video inside, and I'll look at it and give feedback. And she couldn't get up. She couldn't get her video. It was from an open mic. She couldn't get her video up, so she just listened to it, and the notes were different with just listening to it, because there's so much when you're doing video that even if you are a little bit not using a lot of variety, if you're using a gesture,
Right.
if you lean in, you'll capture your audience. However, if the picture's not there and it's still the same pacing, then people will leave.
Yes.
So that's really important.
Yes, yes. And I love how you use those examples as you're talking, because those are the kinds of things that you really help me work on, because really we know that stories sell, right? And so a lot of marketers tell us stories sell, right? But then how do we convey that story? Like, we have a basic structure, right? But then how do we make it a good story? How do we make it captivating? How do we write the words in a way that people are going to be like, I need to keep reading this? And or how do I, tell a video, do videos in a way that people want to watch them? And so your methods are just so incredible. And the fact that your soul, let's go back to the Soul Story Lounge. I'm a member of your Soul Story Lounge. I love it. We talk about it in other podcasts, because it's just absolutely amazing. And you give speakers, you give authors, you give presenters, coaches, the opportunity to learn all these things. So tell me a little bit more about the Soul Story Lounge. I mean, the challenges that you do in there are just absolutely freaking insane. Like, they're so valuable. Tell me more.
Well, Soul Story Lounge is my inner circle. I had it on my heart to create something where I had a community of people who had similar values to me. Values that are important are integrity, a sense of wanting to serve, to help people make a bigger impact in the world, and also healing our stories. Very important for me that we heal from our stories. So I am lucky enough, blessed enough to attract people who have lived through so much stuff that I often say it does break my heart when I hear it. And then as they apply my soul story method, my heart gets broken open because I literally, as an empath, can feel the healing. And so I know, because we also tap into, the messaging, that I know that as they're tapping into the message, their message, not my message, and they're sharing it, that healing is reverberating, that there's a ripple effect. And so what Soul Story Lounge is, it's a combination of learning the storytelling and the video techniques and the healing techniques, so that you can go out there and make the biggest impact, which I would say 60% in there are entrepreneurs. So they're building their business. So like, I think, Paula had a really successful launch. I think you might be working with her too, but but it was like, she learned how to do the video and how to sell on video, and had a really successful launch. It's like, so we're celebrating that, and then also the healing part of it. It's like being real. Like, what I love about it too is like how authentic people are. It's like, we live in a hard world, there are things happening all the time. So it's like looking at the world but not getting beaten down by it, like saying, yeah, that's hard, not being a victim to it. But also the other side of it is that, like, because I have a 3-step forgiveness process, right? I have a master's in spiritual psychology. I have a Hero of Forgiveness award. In my 3-step process, you actually have to embrace the victim, but you do it consciously, so that I have exercises so that it doesn't leak out in other areas. And for me specifically, because I'm teaching how to tell your story, it doesn't leak out when you're telling your story, so that nobody's ever worried about you. Even if you're going through something difficult, you're sharing something difficult. And I actually talked about this on the mastermind yesterday. I've had times where, we didn't do a bio, I have an award. I'm a critically acclaimed, I'm an award-winning actress, critically acclaimed one-person show that I've performed all over the world, for over 12,000 people. And I had a performance a couple of years ago, I think it was 2019, where I had a huge breakthrough on stage. I had a huge breakthrough around my dad in person, then on stage, but it was almost like a breakdown on stage because of the healing in person. But I was able to then come off stage and nurture myself and love myself and everything like that. So, and it was one of the best performances I had. Let me just say briefly. So my story being that my father, who I adored, shot and killed my mother in 1995 and married her sister, my aunt. And so it was a big story. And I started sharing that story first on the pages of my journal. That started my healing. Then I was inwardly guided to present it in an acting class that I was in. terrified, filled with shame, hadn't done any of my inner work yet. Instead of getting judgment, which I thought I would, I got a standing ovation, a director who wanted to work with me. It snowballed. I got opportunities to perform, but then I would perform and people would laugh, people would cry, and I'd be absolutely miserable. Took the time off, got a master's degree in spiritual psychology, came to not why did this happen, but how do I thrive now that this happened? Rewrote the ending of my show, took my dad to court for wrongful death when he got out of prison. And so to me, I know the trials and tribulations of telling our very personal story. So that's another, pet peeve I have is, there's this buzz thing, tell your vulnerable story, but I know how that can freaking hurt you if you haven't done the inner work. So that's why my process is very much also a word you use a lot, overcoming yourself is the second part of my process is overcoming your emotions, working with them so that you can actually be so powerful on stage, but you're not feeling bad afterwards.
Yes. One of the things I talk about in my book is, part of Brene Brown said, part of living a wholehearted life is recognizing shame and being able to release it, right? I like to say shame can't survive in oxygen. So when we keep these things inside, they're eating away. Shame is just in there. It's taking over all the thoughts. It makes us feel things in our body. We get that shame in our stomach, and then we can't feel our hands, and there's this whole thing. And so having someone to guide us through that process and being able to talk about those things, that is like releasing the pressure valve when you're able to talk about it, because other people understand. Like, you are not the only person. It's mathematically impossible for you to be the only person that's going through something.
Right. And the thing
Yes.
is, in the Soul Story Lounge is everybody is at a place of taking
Mhm.
radical responsibility for their lives, but not doing a spiritual bypass.
Right.
It's just being
Exactly.
able to be real and then say, how can you turn this into art or power,
Yes.
or a coaching program that can help people? How can I use what I learned? And you don't always have to be on the other side of it. The very
Mhm.
first time I told my story on stage in a one-person show was, will I ever, the ending was, will I ever be able to love and trust again? I didn't know if I could, but it's like I wrote my teaching helps people write the healing into their lives by presenting. And that's another misconception people have, is like they have to be on the other side of it if they're going to speak. No, you don't, but you do want to be conscious. You want to have your witness there so that you can play in, like, you can see the victim, you can see the anger, but you are not that.
Yes, yes, that's so important. And another theme from my book that you're touching on, I love, we're on similar wavelengths because it's just foundational stuff, is spotting that strength in what you used to think was your weakness, right? Because people used
Yeah,
to tell me, you're too emotional, Nicole. And it's not that I was too emotional, it's that I was using my emotions the wrong way. I didn't know how to direct them,
that's
because
interesting.
right? Because my power comes from those emotions. And so
Mm,
instead of sadness, if I was sadness, everybody was going to be sad around me, because I have like that, that aura where people are very connected, I guess, like you talk about being like a thermostat in a room where you set the temperature,
right.
and learning to direct that and be excited, like changing the thoughts, asking yourself different questions, and it's all part of the process. And then telling my story, that just helped me reinforce, these are my strengths. Another one of my weaknesses when I was little is I talk too much. And that's one of the things I talk about in my book. It's one of my strengths, is that I was talking about the wrong things, and after all the things that we've gone through, we learn to talk about the right things. So we learn to talk about the ideas, the things that are going to move us forward, about helping other people heal. And so now I make my money from talking. So it wasn't that it was my weakness. It was just that I was not using it correctly. And you're helping
Exactly.
me embrace that, and thank you. I love you so much for that.
That's so awesome. And I do feel like there's also, like you talked about shame, and I feel like there's so much energy locked inside our secrets. And
Yes.
so if we can just bring them out, and you don't have to share everything publicly, but if you could at least bring them out to yourself. I remember having so much compassion when I finally put my thoughts onto the pages of my journal just a couple of years after my mom died, and I was like, oh my god, that's what I lived through. And I felt so much compassion for myself, because when we try to keep it in our head, it's just so hard, or we're trying to make it okay when there's this seething anger or grief underneath. So it is really wonderful to be able to come to a place where, you have that witness there and you're like, okay, that was something that, well, also, you know what? You're talking about patterns that, you thought were not serving you that are like great now, right? But there's also, there are things that we think serve us and they do until a certain time,
Mhm.
right? So I grew up in such a crazy household that I could really compartmentalize, and I could be like, okay, well, that's all right because this is okay over here. And at some point, it was like also what I would call a spiritual bypass, making something okay that really isn't okay. And so at some point I learned, and it was after my mother was killed, that, I don't have to make everything okay. And that's part of my process. Like, it's okay to be upset about certain things. Just you don't want to stay in that. You want to have the exercises, which I have tools like for that as well. You want to move through it so it doesn't
Right.
stay in you, all that locked up energy.
Yes, yes. No, that's so important. That's where learning to practice gratitude for me came from when I lost my baby. And there's like, what do you hold on to, when you're in that moment and you just don't know? You're like, this is what I was grasping and it's gone. So, like, is this the end? And, and then you make a choice. And then that's where, yeah, those new patterns have to emerge. It's habits. Like, those are the big themes of my book: habits, gratitude, and
How did
seeing.
that happen for you though? How did you go from that loss? Like, did it take a while or did it somehow come in energetically? Did someone share with you? Like, how did you shift?
um,
Do you
a lot of
remember?
quiet time. I remember being alone a lot in that house, and deciding like, are you going to die or are you going to live? Like, it was really like I had to ask myself in that moment, like, okay, is this the end for you?
Yes, that gives me chills. Actually, that would be a really good thing to put into one of your talks. Because I think a lot of people can relate to that moment where it's like, is this it? I remember for me wanting to take my life, and then I was like, but my mother wouldn't want that. And that was the thing that helped me. I think that's really important what you were just saying.
um all right, something I've never talked about. I went through that as well, and I was really young. And I remember, yes, family, like this would hurt the people, like these people, they would be hurt by this. And one of the things that I remember thinking that I was so young is like, if you die, then you can never come, like you can never go to like a theme park ever again. That's how young I was though when I was thinking about that. And so
Oh,
that is why now going back, like I'm getting tears in my going to
I'm getting it
Universal,
too.
it's such a big deal for me is because that's one of the things that really when I was little, it's so silly, but that's how little I was,
I know, but
and
also what the audience doesn't know is you lost your mom really young too.
yes, yes, yes. I was 1.5, yeah. And so, there was a lot of trauma and a lot of turmoil. And you know what? When you tell your story and you really like break it down with your system and you see and you're like, well, no wonder I'm fucking sad. Or no wonder
Exactly.
I'm not where I thought. It's like, because I've had to deal with all of this and I'm so proud of myself for being where I am despite all of this shit that happened.
Exactly. And that's the big thing.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's like, think of, you know, you could say that some of the things we live through are very dramatic, right? Very,
Mhm.
big losses and stuff. And some people compare and they're like, oh, I didn't have all that happen. But believe it or not, because I have helped over 200 people, there are a lot of people who've had really dramatic things. They just hide or they make it like it's not such a big deal, but it is. But, even for people who haven't been through as big things, right? As big losses, let's say, or as dramatic. And I talked about this also yesterday in the mastermind. It's like, I have worked with people who are like, they just were really lonely. They didn't have someone there for them. Like, not that anyone mistreated them or anything like that, But in that alone, it's like we really have to honor what we've lived through and why we're still thinking about it. Like, what is the lesson underneath that you're still there? Or what choices do you make because that loneliness lives with you? Because that's, that's a human condition, So, yeah, it is wonderful to have compassion for ourselves versus what we do, you know? And then, of course, an important component of the work that I do with the healing is, so if you feel like that and you identify when you were really little and this happened, then as an adult with everything you become the parent, the mother that you didn't have, or the father that, let's say, was abusive. You embody the qualities you would love to have had versus always searching for what you didn't have, and you apply those to yourself, so that there's so much inner child work. There's so much, like, you feel like you don't need anything from anyone else. And that is one thing that stops people from sharing their stories too, is like they're afraid they're exposing this thing, and what if someone said something. And it's like, it's okay, because you fill yourself up so much that you don't owe anything to anybody else. You're actually telling your story for yourself.
Right.
First. Like, I think there's this misunderstanding. Like, I know people talk about, oh, you're, business. The audience is the hero. You're doing it for them. But I actually think it's just like a really good novel. The greatest books you've ever read, it's because the person is literally just putting down their heart. They're not thinking about the demographic. That can come out after, or you can have a little bit of an idea of it, or your avatar. But if you actually are true to yourself, you are then tapping into something so much bigger. So then your story is everyone's story, I mean, there's different ways to work with this.
Yes, and then adding those details can be in the editing part. And that
Exactly.
happens to me with a lot of the content that I write. Is I write something out and then I'll be like, you know what, this is not the right order. But then you adjust it. Or I have this story, but I want to relate it to this,
Right.
this group or whatever.
Which is
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
important too, because if you do it in the wrong order, you will literally shut down your muse. So then you'll sound like every other copywriter out there, or every other speaker out there, because you shut down your muse. It's interesting, right? Because once you know about how business works, then you might think about who you're talking to, but you can't have that drive
Mm-hmm.
until
Yeah, no,
after.
I've noticed that it comes out better, like when I'm writing out, like I write something out, let it all come out, and then you reread it and you're like, where's my hook? And then you take that hook,
Right.
you bring it to the top, because you got to bring, you want to bring your readers in, but they stay for the story, right? Because a lot of people are focused on the hook, 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 and the hook is super important. In those first 3 seconds, you've got to get their attention. But then how do you keep their attention? How do you get them to click? How do you get them like to move emotionally and be like, this is the person I want to work with, or this is what I
Right.
want to do, or whatever, oh my God, this story, I need to watch the rest, I need to read this book, whatever it is that, that you're
Right.
promoting. It's the story. That's what's going to win them over. That's what's going to, and so stopping them, super important, but then keeping them there and getting them into your system, into your flow, into your offers, into whatever, and that's where you come in, girl. And like the job that we do with entrepreneurs and with other people, with anyone, if you want to develop your one woman story, I mean, I know that I'm going to be fleshing out a lot of the work that I do with you to write out a book, because the stories are fantastic. Once they're written out, you can tell them out loud, you can put them in a book, you can make a
So
podcast.
many different ways. And I mean, I've helped my clients go from like presenting on stage to putting that same story into a chapter in a book. And I've done the opposite. Someone has a chapter and I've helped them put it on stage. And then I've had people who, just have written a full-length book and now we're putting it on stage, and some people who just have an idea. It's pretty incredible. It's really exciting, because I feel like the different ways you share your story, or in an interview, you'll tell your story differently if you have 5 minutes versus you have a 30-minute podcast. And what your intention is your intention to heal people. Like, if I'm speaking at a mental health training, I'm going to go into details about the healing part of my story. If I'm doing a business interview, I'm gonna tell my story, but I'm probably not gonna go deeply into it until unless the host asks me and it's relevant to their audience, things like that. Yeah, but I'm still gonna say it, because I know Well, first of all, it's a pivotal part of who I am, but it's also my brand story. It's also like I wouldn't be teaching this if my father had not killed my mother, because I wouldn't have gone on the deep healing path that I did. So I wouldn't have learned these tools, but it's once I learned them, how could I not, kind of thing.
One of the things that I quoted, I was talking about Malcolm Gladwell, that you mentioned the 10,000 hour rule. And I was it in Blink? I don't remember which book it was, but he talks about how is it well, maybe I'm the one who talked about it and I'm quoting him. um like people that go through traumatic situations, they're not the only ones that have confidence. Confidence comes from other things. But the confidence that we derive from those traumatic situations, like the drive, the perspective that we get,
Brilliant.
it's a special kind. Um and like you do just such a great job of helping, because like it's tough. It can be really tough to the situations that people bring to you, and you just do such a beautiful job of not only helping people tell their story, but making sure that it's not a downer, that
Yes,
people
because
leave
there's a process.
inspired. Yes.
Yes, and that's why I teach that. It's very important to me that the final product is not a downer. It can be hard as you're going through it, but it's very
Yes.
important, because what's the point otherwise? We're here to elevate the world. We're here
Mhm.
to elevate ourselves. So therefore, you want to look at what is the message behind it that got you resilience, because to me, as someone who lived as a victim for a very long time after this happened, yeah, and there's so many people on the that could get on the bandwagon and like, oh, it's so horrible. What happened to you? The reason not to stay there is because, for me at least, I was disempowered. My life wasn't working. It's not like I had great relationships. I was making a lot of money. I was creating. No, if you're a victim, you can't. It doesn't work like that. Like if you're a victim, you're going to attract other victims. So while there can be like a relief in sharing your victim story, that's why I teach. It's like it's okay to recognize it, but then just get it all out so you can just move on and have a better life.
Yes,
So for
yes.
my cat is over there being like, let me in, let me in. I don't know, I'm gonna have to put something over the over the window. Do you have a cat or no?
No, I have a dog.
The cats are like staring at you like that, with this intensity, whereas dogs are just like sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, he will stare me down. Like if he wants something, he'll be like,
Like
I'm
a
ready to go
treat.
outside. He'll sit there and just look at me. Or in the morning, he's like, I'm ready to go out. And then he'll just sit there and just stare. I'm like, oh, yes, I get the stare down as well. All
It's so funny. Worth it
right.
though.
Now, you mentioned that you have a special gift for our listeners.
Yes. So we started with, how do you turn your talk into an unforgettable performance? So I do have something for those of you who, well, actually performers will love this too, but it's specifically for entrepreneurs. Like, how do you turn that talk into a performance? So I have 20 tips for you. And I have the link there that we'll have to put in there because I didn't
Yep,
like
it will
Bitly
put it
it.
in the show notes. No worries.
Yeah, so you'll get 20 tips, so that taken from, me as an actor, and also having taught so many entrepreneurs as well over the years, of how you really get that confidence, how you can, courageously take chances, so that when you're sharing your story, not only is your story important, but so is your presentation.
Yes, I love it. And then we mentioned the Soul Story Lounge. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how we can get more information on that?
Yes, that is my inner circle, my paid community. Um, I think the best way is to go to the page http colon slash slash soulstorylounge.com. There's no S there. It's the http soulstorylounge.com. And it's not always open, but if you go to that page and you read it and you're interested, definitely reach out to me. We have monthly masterminds where you'll get coaching from me in a group. In a group, you have pretty much 24/7 access to me, and inside our communication channel. We have guest experts every month. We've had people teaching how to be fantastic doing selfies. We've had people teaching on how to do reels, how to do short form video, how to do TikTok. So many really great things. There's my trainings on how to find your story and how to be confident on video. I have a portal of more stuff. Someone who came in who talked about how he booked his TED talk. I mean, there's a lot and a lot more coming. And then we also have social calls in there as well. And there's more. Oh, and there's, of course, quarterly, there's open mics for my clients. So I do all the producing of that. And we have graphics and we have you telling your story. And here and there, I'll throw in little bonus trainings because I want the best from you. So you can get feedback on your writing, on your storytelling, things like that. And then when you just, people in the lounge get access to other things as well. It's
Yes.
really a lovely, lovely group. Oh, and you get my book. My father killed my mother and married my aunt, Forgiving the Unforgivable. I have that in the back office as well.
And you get to hang out with me because I'm in there as well. So you get
And you get
backstage
to hang out with
access
Nicole.
to
And I
Nicole.
will say, Nicole designed the entire site, the entire sales page. Like it's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad you love it. Yes, it was so
I
much
love
fun.
it.
I love working with you. So wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Social media. How can we follow you on social media?
Brenda Adelman on Facebook mostly. That's where I'm active, although you'll see me on other places. But also I have a free group called Soul Story Tribe. Like I just ran a challenge in there, Tell Your Soul Story for Impact and Income. So when you get into Soul Story Tribe, you have direct access to me. That's my free group as well.
Awesome. So all those links will be in the comments. Brenda, I want to thank you again for being here with us today. This has been so wonderful. Highly
Thank
recommend
you.
anything that Brenda puts out. If you can get your hands on free stuff, paid stuff, whatever it is, like buy everything from Brenda. She is absolutely amazing and she's gonna absolutely change your life. As a presenter, as
Can
a
I take a
business
picture?
owner. Yes, of course. Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you for the kind
So
words.
thank you so much for being here. I love working with you, Brenda. You are just absolutely amazing. And all right. So until next time, guys, thanks for being here. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.